So you have this great world of 1930s Jim Crow South. Based in reality, but you also have the vampires. How did you want to approach the composing where the vampires story did not drown out, the music didn't drown out your original story, but at the same time they served each other?
Well, you have this incredible material for the vampires, where Ryan was writing it in the script with the Rocky Road to Mountain, Rocky Road. And we used some of that material to also portray that in the score. So you have some of that playing on the fiddle, and so it's like a whole different blend of music for the vampires.
All right, so we're going to talk a little Heated Rivalry. For an audience who might never have heard of that, no, I'm teasing, everybody knows Heated Rivalry. What was it about the project initially drew you in?
I guess it was just like, at first, it was Jacob's way to present it. He was like so enthusiastic with it, and I thought it would be a groundbreaking show, really. I had this feeling. The book series had already quite a following. So it was the whole thing. The whole thing seemed ambitious, and I was so happy I was offered that, yeah.
Now you had to compose themes for each of the characters who are also hiding, so to speak, because they can't necessarily come out. What was the process of developing their themes and their characters who are a little ambiguous?
I mean, it was, at first it starts like a thrill, they just don't really know what's up. They just like take it slowly, but fast and slowly, but at first they're not really sure. So I wanted something thrilling, that's for sure. And created a few themes for them, something more about like the more intimate content, and just like something to define their love, just to match their love on the screen. But
Now, for our composing students in the audience, I'd like to ask, is there any scene that you're most proud of? Something that was a little challenging, but you're really happy that you pulled off, and you thought the music really amped the scene up?
I guess, yeah. I wrote a song called It's You, and that became the flagship of my score. And I'm from a singer-songwriter background, so I didn't really know if I could. I knew that I could write instrumental on the spot matching the scene, but I wrote an actual song for this scene. It's not intrusive. I sing, and it's so perfect for the scene that I'm really proud, and I feel like it was not too intrusive, and it's just a way to celebrate their love, and I think it's a great song, so I'm happy about it.
We're going to go for some Found.
Yes, we are.
So Found, for you, what was it about the project that said, I got to come on board?
Honestly, it was so much about the underrepresented voices. The whole premise of Found was finding the missing. It was not even about the found people, it was all the missing, and it was missing from the underrepresented communities. And I love working with Nkenge Carol. She's amazing. She always has brilliant ideas, and she always brings something that's really special and unique to the table. And I was just like super, super thrilled to be a part of that and help tell the story.
So there's two key aspects. Let's talk about the first one. Just the procedural part of it. How did you approach composing that part of it? The actually finding the victims and knowing that the victims are missing the most of the movie. So how did that affect your score?
I think a lot of it is like thematically based, so it's good to have the proper themes, and so when you do find the missing people, you kind of bring in that theme, you kind of bring in that feeling of, yes, we're home, they're coming home, we're making it happen. I think that's really, really special, and so that's what I always try and focus on.
Now the darker part is our lead character, who does have a noble cause, takes an approach of kidnapping her former kidnapper, of that. How did you approach that little ambiguity and darker side of that character?
I oddly felt very comfortable with this darker side because I feel with Gabby mostly because honestly I feel like you can't have a hero who's like all light. You know what I'm saying? I feel like to be like a really good hero, you have to have that like really like that push and pull. You have to have the darker thing that kind of keeps you anchored in something, in something that like sort of like feral about yourself, or else where do you get some of that energy from? So I don't know, but for me, I thought it was awesome. I love playing the dichotomy. That's my favorite thing is playing the dichotomy of heroes. A hero versus the villain that they fight with on the inside, Anyway, so.
Now, how did you approach the villain Paul, who is so great, but he's also confined? How did you approach his music?
Yeah, his was a lot more. I think it was a little bit trickier to find. For some, well, I think he can kind of be, because he was also had his like very villain side and his very like hero side as well. So again, themes, having a very specific sound palette. His was more like grizzled, you know, and dirty and grimy for his like sort of sound palette. And then just kind of, you know, building other sound palettes on top of that, and using themes and palettes and sonic worlds to get it done.
The boys, what for you was the most challenging scene for the last season?
For this season, oh man. Well, the biggest like tightrope to walk was the thing that just came out today, which is the original song called "Raise 'Em Up," which I co-wrote with David Diggs from Hamilton, and he performs it as "Oh Father," and the song is all about Homelander being announced as actual God, not like maybe God, but like as God, and so that's a big responsibility to be like I had to write lyrics and music that announces literally God, but also with a tongue-in-cheek wink and with the charisma of somebody like David. So I think we did it. I think we nailed it. But yeah, it was really fun to do, and it was a great challenge.
How fun has it been balancing the crazy world of the boys, but also mixing in emotionality and the character emotionality, keeping it grounded?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is this season I think has a lot more emotion, especially these last 2 episodes, because obviously people are dying. Frenchie died. Sorry, I mean that's not a spoiler anymore. It came out yesterday. So characters you loved for 5 years are going away, and to be able to do that as a composer and bring that back and say, yeah, sure, we have an exploding penis or whatever, crazy, but we still have this deep connection to Frenchie and Kamiko and Huey and Starlight and all these characters that we've got to serve that as real emotion, because people love them and they have a real relationship with each other. And so as a composer, to have that range and be able to do the crazy stuff and then still, like you said, land that emotion, that's been the big challenge of season 5, and for me it's been the most fun.
Karate Kid.
Yeah.
What was the biggest challenge in kind of honoring the original, which is a great music score, but also making it for today's audience?
The biggest challenge was making it for today's audience. I mean, everything had to be super modern and very top 40, really appeal to the younger generation. But it was also very important for me to use Bill's themes and to bring that into the score and be nostalgic. And so when I did do that, I left it alone. It was very much orchestral and very much, I would hope, how Bill would want it, because I didn't want to change that.
But you have Daniel, for example, LaRusso, a love character, older. So he does have to evolve, and I guess the music has to evolve with his age, too.
Yeah, but I think he sort of becomes the Miyagi character in the movie, so, he needs to have that portent and just feel very, like, he is older, and he's the sensei now, so it was good to have him as like an orchestral strand.
All right, is there any scene that you're most proud of, more of a subtle scene where you thought the music really amped up the emotional drama of the scene?
Yeah, I mean, when Jackie goes back to Mr. Miyagi's house and Daniel's there, I actually used a fusion of my theme and Bill's Painting the Fence theme. And yeah, that was my favorite. Because, I mean, like, all the production and all the bells and whistles is fun, but actually doing like a very stripped down orchestral arrangement is my favorite thing.
Okay, so the John Candy story, beautiful film. It shows both sides, the side that we love, the comedic, the fans, but also the darker personal side. How did you want to balance those two sides?
I mean, that was one of the biggest challenges in the film. We had to write a score that was triumphant and big for all of his characters that he portrayed in all of his films, but that would also work for him in these, really like honest moments where he was struggling with his mental health and with anxiety and just the pressure of keeping it going.
As a fan, how was it having the family there as a resource?
The Candy family, they're the sweetest people on earth. Chris, Jen, and Rose, I can't say enough nice things about them. They were so supportive of us making this film, and I mean, we wouldn't have been able to do it without them.
Is there any scene that you're most proud of, more subtle scene where the music really amped up the emotionality?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of moments kind of towards the end of the film. There's this about 9-minute long sequence where John's really struggling with his anxiety. It's becoming crippling. And it was 9 minutes long where you had to keep the audience on the edge of the seat. And then, unfortunately, he passes, and then the following scene, a few minutes later, it's this really beautiful celebratory moment with him in scenes from Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And they really just opened up the gates and let me write something that took over the scene. So I'm really appreciative of that.
All her fault. What was it about the project initially brought you on board?
Well, the actors, like the cast is incredible. Dakota Fanning, Sarah Snook, to begin with. I love the book. I had actually read the book before I met with the producers. It's a great novel. It's an incredible story. And I like solving problems. And this show, I was hired pretty late into the process, and I think part of the reason it was late is they were really trying to figure out what they were going to do with their music. And so it was very fun. It was a great team. I like the idea that none of our characters are really. It explores the complexity of human beings. The capacity of someone to make a very difficult choice, and you can justify it, but maybe you're doing the wrong thing, or maybe you're not. It's easy to judge people, but a lot of people in our story are in these sort of no-win situations, and they do the best they can, or what they think they should, or really what they want to do. And I like the complexities of those kind of people. I think that's interesting to explore in drama.
What were the challenges of then doing the ambiguity of each character and their themes?
Well, I give you, for example, obviously Peter, the husband, is an obvious one. We learn at the end who he really is. But even he's complex, he all along the way, he can justify what he does. Another one I really love, we talked about yesterday on a panel, this Detective Alcarez in episode 4. A lot of times this guy would just be a functional character. He goes and gets the clues and moves the story forward. Turns out he has a son with special needs, and there's a wonderful scripting in his story where basically in order to get his son in a school that he really wants to get him to, he is basically being asked to do something very illegal with some evidence. And it's kind of just a Sophie's choice morally that he's got to make between, maybe doing the best for his son or maybe breaking his own code of morality. And it's just so heartbreaking, but it's also so relatable because we often find ourselves in this type of situations where there's a hard choice, whether it's some sort of hardship or economic hardship or a family member. This is real life, and so I like movies and films that sort of mirror that honest complexity of life.
Yeah, I was sort of touching on that. We have a lot of composers in our audience that watch, young composers.
Oh, well, love that.
What is there any other scene in your show that you're most proud of? A subtle scene, maybe not one of the glamorous big ones, but something was subtle, like you really with the music kind of umped it up a little, and maybe audiences wouldn't notice it, as much if they didn't know music.
Good. Well, the one I'm really proud of that's a bigger scene, it's easy to notice, is the end of episode 7 when Carrie walks into the water and you kind of learn what happened to her. And it's this beautiful sort of almost religious piece. But I would say a quieter scene I'm really proud of that's very important. In the first episode, Sarah Snook and Dakota Fanning find themselves in this bathroom at an event at their kids' school, and they wore the same dress. And they sort of have this beautiful, warm moment of connection emotionally. And in the midst of the horror of what's happened, it's a flashback, but you have this sort of, hey, there's Harry Gregson Williams. I gotta say hi, Harry. I just saw him in Prague. How exciting is that? But in the middle of this mystery thriller, you have this beautiful moment of connection, and I found a theme there that was very useful. I'm very proud of that because I used it several other times to really detail this friendship, and it's a good example of how the warmth of a storyline in the middle of something that is largely, designed to thrill you and keep you on the edge of your seat and guessing in mystery land, it can kind of make the ride more interesting for the audience. It's not always all about just climbing to the next emotional, narrative peak. Sometimes it's contrasting it so that when you come back, it feels new and sudden, and you can surprise the audience in an interesting way.
Tracker, what was it about the project that brought you on?
To Tracker?
Yeah.
Honestly, I do a lot of co-composing with Tyler Bates, and it was one of the shows that he brought into our studio, and I was lucky enough to be brought on with him. And the show is it's doing so well, and it's so much fun to write for.
All right, we do have a lot of composing students in the audience, so we like to ask, was there any scene that you're most proud of? Maybe a subtle scene where you thought the music really kind of added to it, that the audience might not notice as much, but it's subtle in there.
You know what, probably with Tracker, it's one of those shows where at the beginning of every episode there's a sort of a crime to be solved or a missing person to be found. And by the end of the show, each show we find out who did it or who that is. At the beginning of every show, Coulter, our main character, arrives and he pulls up in his truck to the crime scene to figure out. And in the very first episode that we ever scored, we made a theme for him pulling up in his truck. And now every episode we do like a slightly different rendition of that theme together. And that's actually one of the ones I'm most proud of. Recently we changed it up and the showrunner who we work with went, "Where's the Coulter driving music? We need the Coulter arriving music." Okay, great. I'm glad you missed it. So I am really proud of that one.
How fun is it actually developing music for the pilot, kind of setting the tone for the series? It must be challenging too, obviously.
Oh my God, it's always the hardest part when you start a TV show. That pilot's like writing a movie, like starting from scratch. But it's so brilliant because once you've found your colors and your tones and textures, the rest of the show then becomes so much easier. But yeah, that first episode is always the toughie.
All right, so we're going to talk a little Tyler Perry, Madea's Destination Wedding.
Yes.
What was it about the project that said, you know what, I got to be in this one?
You know, I'm a big fan of Tyler Perry because he is one who makes content that people consume voraciously. They love his content. And I love Madea movies. I watched all of them. So all of a sudden to be asked to be part of like the Madea-verse, I was like, wow, this is really a defining moment for me.
Okay, so then, but now you have to actually get to work. You love the project. What was the biggest challenge? Was any character sequence or scene that really challenged you?
Well, the thing about working on a Tyler Perry film is that it's really about getting out of the way for the comedy. So it's about finding the right momentum in the music and then getting out of the way for the comedy to land. So it really is all about comedic timing. And that can be challenging because, you know, there's a lot of dialogue, a lot of talking in these movies, and you gotta make sure that that stays supreme and you support it. So that was a bit of a challenge for me at first, but you know what? Love it. We got the movie done, and all the music I wrote made it in the movie.
Is there any scene you're most proud of? Something, maybe could even be a subtle comedic scene, something like, oh, I really loved when the music kicked in and how it helped.
I have to say when they are at the airport, about to head to the Bahamas. I love that cue that I wrote. It's funky, it's fun. You see Madea rolling in on the cart, and you know, obviously Medea's a big person,
yep.
So the cart's having a little bit of struggle. So it's wonderful. I had a great time writing music for that scene.
Amy Bradley is missing.
That's right.
What was about the project that drew you in?
What drew me in was it was telling a story about Amy Bradley, and it was how could musically I represent Amy. And one of my ideas was to introduce a vocal, female vocal, but in a kind of distorted, slightly messed up way, because we don't actually know what happened to Amy. So sometimes the vocal is very beautiful, sometimes it's distressed and haunting. And that became a key of the soundtrack, and I think that's what resonated with viewers.
So do you think as a composer it helped having that ambiguity create your songs where you had to really find a way to tell that, because the thing is not always clear?
Exactly. I mean, I'm always trying to find a way musically to tell a story. Any musical choice I make is based on telling the story, somehow helping, the story. So, yeah, the vocals were an important part of that. The production, Netflix wanted something bold in the score, so they gave me the freedom to try bold choices, and I really appreciate that as well, because that doesn't always happen.
And for our composing students in the audience, we have a lot.
Yeah.
Is there any scene, maybe more subtle scene, that you're most proud of where you thought the music really amped up the scene and something maybe the audience wouldn't obviously notice as much?
I think the scene where Amy goes missing in the cabin is a pivotal point, and I went for very creepy, kind of dry vocals. So if you listen to that, it's very edgy, it's very close to you, and I think it creates this wonderful eeriness, and that was a scene I worked on for quite a long time to get it right, and it's a pivotal part of the story, because from then on, questions go back to that particular point. So
what was it about the project initially said, I got to come on board?
For Bees?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, well, Howard Gordon, I worked with on Homeland and 24. I've had a long relationship. And when you have a deep relationship, you develop kind of an artistic shorthand and so forth. And So and he had these, and then Claire Danes and Matthew Reese. I'd worked with Claire before, not Mr. Reese, and so their chemistry together was explosive, and it was just, and the direction by Antonio Campos. I mean, it's really about the people, and it was just wonderful. I mean, it was just, you get a little high off it.
We'll talk a little about Claire. So a little deeper about that. So your previous relationship working with her, how did that help you kind of give you a foundation, but you also had to do a new character with her?
It is, yeah. I mean, it's a really interesting question because you have a creative history with someone like let's take the most famous collaboration in music, Spielberg and Williams. They do such different things together, but they have a heart center together. They share sort of a real love and connection for one another, and my affection for Howard and his storytelling talent and so forth, our willingness to kind of experiment and try different things, and to do so in a really creative space that really helps. I mean, having long relationships, I think, is really great for shows.
Now, for our composing students in the audience, I'd like to ask, is there any scene that you're most proud of, maybe a more subtle scene where you thought the music just kicked in and really raised the scene, that even surprised you maybe?
There was one thing that I discovered. I will say there was one scene in episode 3 when Miss Dane's Aggie has to go up and see Niall at the top of this abandoned building that he's building. And it was like the way they filmed it was a very dark tower kind of thing. And I just instinctively, he was such an important monument for him and what he was doing that it kind of took on almost a ceremonial thing to me. And I used a very small voice instead of just, oozing weird textures, and it was more like she was entering a layer, and I hadn't planned it. It was a very simple idea, but it's just that you had all this space in the wind, and then she gets to the top, and then we take the music out. These things have to be so sculpted carefully, so when you uncover a nice accident like that, a discovery like that, and they like it, you hope they like it. You hope they're not going to go, what's this? So anyway, that's among many things. There's another thing when she takes a phone call at the end of episode 1 and she's freaking out and she's panicking. I did some things with flutes that I was hoping would do well with these jagged flute sounds, and they work. You don't know, man. We do our best.
All right, Hazbin Hotel. What was it about the project that made you want to come on board?
Honestly, it's the clarity of vision. So the showrunner of the project, Vivian Medrano, she is such an auteur, which is very rare to find in animation because animation tends to be a more studio-driven process than creator-driven. And to get on board of a creator-driven animated project is such a rare opportunity, and whenever they come along, people really respond to them, and I was so excited to be involved in this one.
Do you find animation more freeing than live action?
By an enormous amount. I would say not on the deadlines. The deadlines are nuts, but the level of emotional exaggeration and the way you can heighten in animation, you really can't get away with in live action.
Now, for our composing students in the audience, I'd like to ask, is there any scene that you're most proud of, maybe a more subtle scene where the music kind of kicked into gear, an emotional beat?
Well, I have to say, in an NDA-safe way, there is a sequence of 2 characters meeting in the upcoming season of Hazbin Hotel that I think is really the high point of my songwriting career, and I'm so thrilled for people to get a chance to see it.
So, Vicious.
Yes.
What was it about the project that initially said I have to come on board?
I was able to start the process with the script. So I wrote all about 200 minutes worth of music early on in the process, and we were able to evolve it as the story grew, as the visuals grew, and then I worked on the Paramount lot with Brian Bertino and the entire editing team during it. So it sounded like a fun process, and I love working with the director.
And what was it, for you, most challenging scene or sequence?
The most challenging sequence, one of the ending shots, because we didn't know, we had about 3 different pieces of music there, and then finally it clicked, and the visual never lies, and that time we all just knew it was right.
Is there any scene or sequence you're most proud of, more of a subtle scene where you thought the music kind of really amped it up and helped the scene emotionally?
You know what, actually, I think the beginning scene of the film, there's a long sequence where we were able to introduce every instrument that was going to be used in the film within the first minute and a half. in a really unique way, getting extended techniques and unusual sounds out of them. So I would say the first minute and a half I just still love. So.
Okay, just let you know I'm from Long Island, so forgive me if I slip into my accent.
It's perfect.
You know, we'll talk a lot of water.
Yeah. I'm from New York too, so we're close.
All right, so what was it about the project that said I have to come on board?
So Liz Garbus, who I've worked with on several projects, approached me about the project, and because it was her doing it, I said yes to it. It's the type of project that I would not just have said yes to anyone directing, because it needs to be handled with nuance and respect, which she does. And then I came on board and we worked on it together for several months. And, it's a very complex, nuanced story that we wanted to make sure that we are not sensationalizing it with the music, and that we're also really coming from the angle of the victims and their families and staying with that.
So for you, what was the most challenging scene then?
I'll be honest, the whole series was challenging. It was very hard, and I worked with my team of 3 music editors, and we were very mindful about who's watching what and how we take breaks and kind of reboot from it, because it's heavy subject matter. Yeah.
Is there any scene, maybe a more subtle scene, that you're most proud of, where you thought the music really kicked the story up, and seeing the audience might not notice who are not composers, but you're like, wow, this really worked well?
There's a thematic material written for some of the scenes that the families of the victims are being interviewed. And I wrote this very beautiful elegy-like music with violin that is very pronounced. And it's in stark contrast to the more electronic, darker stuff. This is more the human side of the story. So piano, violin, and you can hear it throughout. And I think it's much more subtle. But it jumps out in its subtlety and compassion.
Silo.
Yes.
What was it about Silo that made you want to come on board?
Several things. Probably number one, the director of the first 3 episodes, and Morten Tildum. We had worked together before on a show called Defending Jacob, and when you work with somebody, like a director that sort of gets, I think it's the opposite actually. You work with a director who knows that their composer gets them. And I think we just found a shorthand, we found a relationship and a trust and understanding on previous work. So I was like, when he was like, I want you to do this thing, I was like, absolutely. And that's just the beginning. Then there's the sci-fi aspect, which I'm a huge fan of. And just everything about it was so intriguing. And I just saw it as a beautiful, interesting canvas palette to write music.
For our composing students in the audience, what scene for you is maybe a more subtle scene, but a scene that you're most proud of where the music really amped up the emotional beat of the scene?
In Silo.
In Silo, yeah.
We already are through 2 seasons now, and the 3rd one is coming out. So I'll leave season 3 out.
Yes.
To be honest with you, the very opening of episode 1 is really what set the tone for the whole series, and it's where I came up with the themes. And the truth of the matter is that I thought I had like 3 months to do it, and then about a week into programming silly synth sounds, I just get a call from Morten saying, by the way, the teaser needs to be done in 3 days. So I honestly think that's my favorite, because maybe it's because I just didn't have any time to think, and so much of the thematic material of the whole series came out of just that pressure cooker.
But you also say, isn't that the fun part about doing a pilot, where you're setting the musical tone for the whole series?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And I mean, it's funny with these things, because so you spend a lot of time thinking about it. And I think you're informing your subconscious, and then there just comes a time when you need to deliver. And thankfully I'd had a lot of time to think about it. So, it's, you're absolutely right. that's when you set the tone. That's when you sort of, and Silo, I think, more so than most series I've done, the music really is a huge part of the world building. And it just sets a tone that needs to, I don't know, it's just a dream project, really.
All's fair.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What was it about that project that made you want to come on board?
Well, when we heard from Ryan Murphy that he wanted the score to sound like 90s R&B pop girl groups, that was super exciting for my co-composer Morgan and I. We thought that was a great idea, a great vision, and that's kind of, we took that idea and ran with it.
What for you was what scene, maybe more subtle scene, that you're most proud of, that you thought the music really amped up the emotional beat, but the audience might not recognize it because it's not like a big scene?
Good question. I think there's a great scene where in the pilot where Kim Kardashian's character breaks up with her boyfriend, and we wrote this really great sort of very melodic kind of sympathetic theme for her, which worked very well for that moment and ended up being sort of reused throughout the series. And I think I'm kind of proud that we did that. So that kind of worked out well. So.
Predator Badlands.
Yeah.
Loved it. What was it about the project that initially said, I've got to be on board?
Well, that the Predator was the protagonist. So musically, that meant trying to treat him more as someone we're rooting for and not as a traditional monster. So that was really interesting to me.
So how do you want to balance our traditional score that we know of the Predator, but also making him the hero?
Well, I was really trying to tap into a feeling of his ancestry, kind of a ritualistic feeling, rather than, fear and the typical kind of horror energy. So, yeah.
Now, I did love Elle Fanning in the movie, and her song. What was it composing for her?
It was awesome. She was the only human-ish character in the movie, so I'm like, yes, there's like emotion there. But yeah, she was fantastic. She was funny. She gave a lot of emotion. So there was a wide range of stuff I got to play with her.
And what point of the project did you realize, oh my God, I'm doing a Predator movie?
The whole time? I don't know. It actually felt really different for a Predator movie. Because I'd worked on Prey with the director previously, so I had been in Predator world for a long time. So this was really fun because it was so different.
That's interesting you say Prey, because I love the fact she's an isolated character. How did that change your composing when you have a character that's completely alone in Prey?
Yeah, the music was really about her personal journey and that growth path that she was on. So I was really trying to tap into her emotions and her arc.
The Neighborhood, what was it about the project you said, I got to come on board?
Really, Kurt Farquhar asked me to help with the theme song. So I was in Sprouts shopping for vegetables. I left everything in the bag and hopped in the car. Yeah, it's Kurt Farquhar. That's what it is. He's one of the most iconic composers of all time, so of course I'm going to do it.
Okay, Spider-Man 3.
Yes.
A lot of characters. What was the biggest challenge of kind of like distilling the theme for each character?
The biggest challenge on Spider-Man 3 was definitely, I was called in because the original composer, Danny Elfman, had a falling out with Sam Raimi, the director. And I had worked with Sam on a couple of things already, including a film called The Gift. And then he produced the Grudge movies. I did those. So when it fell apart with Danny, he asked me to come on board. The biggest challenge, of course, was, well, that's kind of a tough act to follow, and can I bring something special to the movie and make everybody happy? But I did, ultimately.
I did feel like the scene that hit me the most is when James Franco dies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, with Toby, because you had this big, great action scene and the great music, but now you're toning it down to capture the emotionality of a best friend dying, which everybody can relate to. What was the process of composing for that scene?
You know what? I don't even remember that scene. I can remember that the scene that they talk about a lot about, there was an emotional moment, and this is something I had to get right for Sam. I didn't originally, but he loved what I ended up doing, was the Sandman scene, where he has the photo of his daughter, and we realize why he does the things that he does when he's being destructive. It's a tragedy, and that's all great horror. Well, it's not a horror film; it's an adventure film with a horror element.
Is that the fun part of doing these kind of these action movies or horror films with Sam Raimi, when you can find those emotional moments that the audience, the grounded moments?
Totally, And my favorite of these scary movies I've done have been tragedies. There's some tragic element in them, and that gives you the opportunity to try to highlight with your music the fact that this person, we should care about them. In a lot of the slasher movies, it's like they come and go. But in a great horror movie like Frankenstein, like Wolfman, there's this element of tragedy.
But actually, your film, The Gift, really got under my skin.
What's that?
The Gift got really under my skin, emotionally.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Because, it's interesting you should mention that. Because when I sat down with Sam to write the score for that, he said, okay, this is it's a crazy, dark mystery, a murder mystery. Yeah. But most importantly, what I want the music to be mindful of is it's about Cate Blanchett's story and her not being able to deal with the death of her husband, not allowing the kids to go to the cemetery, not to talk about it, and actually her having her second sight abilities or psychic abilities in solving the murder released her and allowed her to go to the graveyard at the end with the kids and finally embraced or come to terms with the death of her husband. So I got to be emotional at the end.
But you also had the challenge of Keanu Reeves playing a darker character.
Yeah.
We're not used to Keanu being so
not.
dark. How fun was that, kind of taking Keanu's character to a dark light?
Well, that was cool. I mean, that was good. That's cool. I did another movie with him called Sweet November with Charlize. Yeah. So that was a different side. So it was all good.